Okay, great. We can start.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you everybody for coming and showing interest in the Buddha Dharma. It's most wonderful. Thank you for those who have been here before to continue with your interest. And for those who are new for trying this out. So the Buddha Dharma is all about our mind. Yeah, we try to work with our mind. This is so because the mind is actually the most important factor in our life. Like all our actions that we're doing out of certain motivations or impulses in the mind. So actually the Buddha is saying that we are all wanting to be happy, we don't want to suffer. And this is actually motivating pretty much any of our actions. So this is why we're doing all the things that we're doing in order to get rid of problems and hindrances, and in order to make satisfying experiences, to experience happiness, peace, harmony, and so forth. And so to be able to deal with problems depends on how you deal with your mind. The very place where you experience problems is in the mind. Yeah, the problems are in the end an experience, like a blockage or a hindrance or something like that, or a disharmony. And also what kind of happiness you're experiencing is depending on your mind, on your attitudes, how you perceive things, how you deal with things, and so forth, with situations, with other people, with yourself. And also the happiness that we're looking for is also happening in the mind. It's a state of mind. Happiness is a state of mind. It's not a physical state. It's not an external state. All the physical states or the external states might be conducive for us experiencing happiness, but happiness in the end is a mental phenomenon. And that's what we're actually looking for. We're looking for happy experiences, maybe for personal growth. Maybe we would like to be loving and kind and so forth. So also this is love and kindness is also a mental quality. So the Buddha is in his teaching all about dealing with the mind. He's teaching to us in order that we can understand more about the mind, to become more skilled in dealing with our mind. And the Buddha is also teaching in a way that is very intimate. He's teaching out of a very close connectedness with us. He has a great understanding about our situation. He feels very close to us. He takes us more serious than we ourselves take ourselves serious. Our happiness, our peace, our freedom from problems and negative states is really his core concern. And he's teaching because of that, because of this concern for our lives, for our experiences, for our happiness, actually. So what the Buddha is describing is that while we don't experience any kind of problems, disharmony, or dissatisfaction, we are actually experiencing problems every day. Every day we are experiencing that we have a miscommunication with somebody, or we get confused about what other people want, or we get angry or agitated on something like this, or we just kind of are restless and something like this. So we don't have really kind of a satisfying situation. Sometimes we have happy moments, but they are rare in between, and we need to work towards those. They're not kind of our natural state of being. But the Buddha says there can be a lot that can be changed. He says many of our problems and many of our blockages are coming from our lack of understanding of our mind, lack of understanding what are the causes of happiness, what are the causes that are leading to suffering. So that's already an important information. The Buddha is saying happiness is not a random thing, but it has causes. And also problems are not a random thing, but they also have causes. So we can understand these causes. We understand the causes of problems and of dissatisfaction and of maybe even pain or being desperate or something like this. Then we can take away these causes. And we don't experience, therefore, this result of unhappy experiences. And if we understand what are the causes for happiness, then we can actively go for the causes and then kind of regenerate the results or ripen the fruits of this kind of spiritual practice that is then in the form of happy experiences or more peace in our mind. And so what the Buddha is suggesting is that we are knowing more about our mind, learn to be gentle with ourselves, be gentle with our mind, try different paths from the ones, different methods from the ones that we're using right now, in order to improve our relationships, our in general our experience of life and so forth. And for that, he's teaching all kinds of, first of all kinds of descriptions of philosophy or psychology for life. And then also not only teaching that, but he's then also teaching techniques that you can use, like meditation or different ways of dealing with problems and so forth. So I'm just saying this in order to start by pointing out how the Buddha is mainly interested in the mind. He's not interested in the political system or in a system of economy, or how to make more money or something like that. The Buddha is interested in how we are dealing with our mind. Again, this is so because the mind is actually the main factor in our life, in our relationships and so forth. And this is not just true for ourselves, but this is true for everybody around us, for the whole society, for everybody, for every politician, for everybody in the workspace, for every man, for every woman, for everybody. The Buddha would even go further, but it's even true for the animal. So if we understand more about the mind, we understand more about ourselves, we can direct our lives in a different way, but we can also understand more about the people around us. And we might be able to help others also in their different forms of suffering or dissatisfaction, or maybe some people around us feel like they're stuck in their life and they cannot move forward. So we can actually learn things that are helpful to others. Because if it is indeed true that the mind is the main factor in our life, and it is also the main factor in the lives of others, then by learning something about our mind, we learn something about their mind. And whatever kind of insight we develop about our own mind, we can then offer, if this is asked for, if there is an opportunity, to others. We can share this with others and support others. Out of a state of concern for others, a love for others, a wish that the other people might be happy, might they also experience more peaceful minds and so forth, having more control over their mind and over their lives. So that's kind of in an extremely rough way what Buddhism is about, or why the Buddha taught. And I wanted to start by talking about this in order for us now to do a little meditation. So actually, I would like to start our session by a short meditation. Very short, but it is a meditation is on the one hand something that helps you to cultivate the mind, to work with the mind. But on another level, it's simply you encountering your mind. Yeah, rather than being with the television or with the telephone or with other people, you are sitting with your mind. You're encountering this very phenomenon that I've been just talking about, the very core factor of your life, where the happiness is happening, where the suffering is happening, where the disappointment is happening, where the satisfaction is happening. So what we're going to do is we're just going to work a little bit with calming the mind, concentrating the mind, or let's say trying to concentrate the mind, and we see what happens. And afterwards, maybe also generating a certain kind of motivation. So just for some 10, 15 minutes, and then I will continue to talk about some of the Buddhist essentials. Okay? I just want to ask again if you hear me clearly, because I'm hearing the sound being very kind of split or very distorted. Do you hear me clearly?
It's a bit unclear, a bit split, as you said. I don't know if it's because of us or because of you.
Yeah, I also don't know. I mean, the thing is that I'm no longer using a headset. Maybe for next time I'm going to organize a headset. Like, you know, I've always had this kind of microphone here.
As before.
But lately, when I did Skype contact with other people, then it was clear. So I don't know.
Yeah. E un pic neclata. Dar totuși nu e de la boxe, știi? E ceva de la connection. It depends on the internet connection, and this is sometimes works well, sometimes has a poor quality.
Okay. So, do you hear me clear enough, or?
Clear enough, yeah.
Yeah.
Fair enough, yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Anyway, let's try to meditate. In meditation, you don't have to talk so much, so that's good. If it doesn't matter if the connection is bad or not. Yeah, so I can see that most people already are sitting on the floor. But anyway, the first thing for meditation is that you take a very comfortable position. Yeah, the body is part of our experience. We are not just the mind; we are body and mind. So we have to make the body conducive, put it in a conducive position for the meditation. So if you sit on the floor, you can try to sit cross-legged and make the legs a stable basis for your position. But the most important part, if you sit on the floor or if you sit on a chair, is that you're sitting upright. The spine, the back is straight. Because if the back is straight, then the inner energies can freely flow up and down, and this is conducive for your meditation and for your thinking and so forth. And then we check that the shoulders don't have any kind of tension. If you find tension, you can roll the shoulders and remove the tension and something like that. And the hands we can place in our lap, putting the right hand, the left hand, and the thumbs are touching. And the head is slightly tucked forward, so that you can still put your fist between the chin and the throat. And then you make sure that the other muscles of the face are relaxed. There's no tension anywhere. And that the eyes we can have half open. This is a description in the text, but for now we can do whatever is most beneficial for you. The eyes, and then we make sure that the jaw is not tense, that the lips are resting naturally on each other and are not pressed together, and also that the teeth are not clenched together or pressed together. And finally, we put the tip of the tongue behind the upper row of teeth at the palate. And this way we prepare the body for the meditation. And then having prepared the body in this way, we can further go to the mind. And we try to concentrate the mind by simply placing the mind on the breath. So the breath is a good object because it's a neutral object, nothing exciting or something like this. It's a very neutral object that we have always at hand. We can use it all the time. And we just try to be aware of how air is flowing in and out at the nostrils, or you can also focus on the stomach, how the stomach is kind of raising and going back in your breathing. And we try to keep the mind on just that. So naturally, there will all kind of thoughts appear, but we are not interested in these thoughts. These thoughts we can just leave alone, they will die down by themselves. If you don't put any interest in them, they will die down by themselves. You can just focus on the breath. If you feel like this could help you, you could count the breath. One time in and out is 1, and 2, and so forth up to 10, and then you start again with 1. So let's just try to do that. Try to place the mind on the breath. If during the meditation we find out that we have been lost in some thoughts, we just gently bring the mind back to the breath. Let's just try to do this for some minutes. If the mind wanders off, just gently bring it back to the breath. Then within this concentrated space in the mind, we can generate a motivation for this session. First, we can ask ourselves, why did we come tonight? What's the motivation for us being here? Let's become aware that we chose to come to this session and that nobody forced us to come and that nobody can force us to come here. Let's check out what is our motivation. What do we expect from this session? What do we want to achieve? And then whatever we found in our mind, we can also work with our mind and generate a motivation. So let's try to generate a motivation along the following lines. I want to participate in this session in order to understand more about my mind and my life, in order to develop myself, so that I can become more compassionate, more wise, more helpful for myself and for everybody around. And then we can slowly come back to the So how did it go? Did you have difficulties to concentrate, or were you distracted a lot? Did you have a lot of thoughts coming, or were you able to place the mind as you wanted on the breath?
It was a little difficult now with all the noise.
Noise from here.
Not from outside.
There is a lot of noise from outside.
Okay,
Distractions from outside.
wonderful. An extra challenge. So what we were trying to concentrate, right? So you see that just because there's some noise around, immediately the mind wanders off to the noise. Yeah, so the same thing is happening in daily life. When we're walking somewhere in the city and there's some noise, our mind is immediately there. Yeah, so it's almost as if the outer objects would have control over what's going on in our mind. So that's kind of an unhappy state. Yeah, to be so easily influenced by the things that are going on around us. Yeah. I mean, there were also parts probably where it was silent and where we might maybe also have problems to focus the mind on the breath, and instead all kind of thoughts came up. People did experience that? Yeah? Kind of thoughts or worries or thinking about the past or planning the future or all kind of things about what I could be instead now and some days.
Why am I here?
Yeah, exactly. Why am I here in the first place? Who brought me here? Yeah. So these things. So there's all kind of thoughts appearing without us wishing for that. It's not kind of that we decide to think about this and this. It just appears. Yeah. And so we wanted to simply place the mind on the breath. seems to be a very simple thing to do. And instead, the mind produced all kinds of thoughts, all kind of distraction. When there was a sound, a noise coming, the mind immediately happily ran off for that and so forth. And this was not our plan. We didn't plan for that. We didn't decide, oh, I'm now going to listen to this noise. We didn't decide, I want to think about this and that now. So there's all kind of things going on in the mind all the time, which are pretty much out of our control for the time being. So we were meditating for a rather short time, just to pacify the mind a little bit, and also for us to have a little bit of a taste of what's going on in the mind. But of course, you could do this for half an hour, and then yet other things would appear in the mind, and the mind would very strongly try to run away from the object of meditation and try to go to thoughts or memories and so forth. So what I'm saying here is, as I said before, on the one hand, meditation is a tool to train the mind, but it's also a way to actually experience the mind, the state of mind as it is right now. Yeah, that there's things happening in our mind that we don't plan, that we don't control, that there's all kind of things happening, reactions happening, all kind of judgments happening, and so forth. So if the mind is indeed that place where all our happiness and all our dissatisfaction is happening, then this seems to indicate it would be good to have more control over the mind. That place where that what we're looking for happiness is happening, and where that what we want to avoid problems and dissatisfactions over what's happening, that we get more control over this place. And I think in spirituality, what is essential is a certain kind of honesty. And so with honesty, I mean that spirituality is actually something very intimate, something very personal. You're dealing really with your life, with how things are going, with your mind, with your different potentials and so forth. And you try to change. Spirituality is definitely about change. And so all of this is very personal. Yeah, you're really dealing with your body, with your mind, with your emotions and so forth. You try to change that. And in order to change that, you first of all need to admit to yourself where you are right now. You need to understand where you start from. And that's very, very personal. Yeah. So when I said spirituality needs honesty, then I say we need to get to that place where we look into our mind and try to find out what's going on in our mind. And if there is no or little control over our mind, then to admit this to ourselves. This is where we are right now. Something needs to change there. And when I say this is something personal, then this is not something that you have to share with somebody else. You don't have to tell other people, oh, I found this and this kind of problem or this kind of blockage in my mind. But it is something that you yourself need to be aware of and need to admit to yourself, and then look for, due to seeing this kind of problem, look for a way to deal with that. Now, let's say that you have often maybe problems in communication with other people, let's say in the workspace or in the family or something. It's miscommunication or problems to get a point across, or people misunderstanding each other. And then to first of all admit this to yourself. This is happening in my life, not necessarily happening in the life of others, but in my life this is happening. Or I have a very strong form of low self-esteem or something. Yeah? So I'm just making an example. I'm not saying that anyone has this here in this room, but by looking into the mind, for example, by meditation, you can find things, and a first step is always to simply assess where we are. What is actually going on in our life? You could also call this generating a form of awareness. Yeah, how our life is actually going. It is also necessary to ask yourself, what do I actually want from life? Yeah, what is my life actually about? Yeah, what am I working towards? So the Buddha is talking about the mind, and is talking about the mind that it has great potential. He says the mind can be, everybody's mind can be free, can be loving, can be calm, can be free of fears, and so forth. So what he says with that is that right now we might be, let's say, not so knowledgeable about our emotions or the way how we communicate with others. So we have maybe certain ways of communicating with others, which might be not as successful as we wish. Yeah, we don't actually reach other people with what we're saying. But the thing is that none of this has to stay like this. All of this can be changed. So one of the main aspects of the mind is that it can change. And it changes anyway all the time. We have all kinds of different objects. We see different things, then we feel different things. So the mind is changing all the time. It's impermanent. It's changing all the time. And so the Buddha is emphasizing that whatever states of mind we have right now, we can improve them, the good ones, and we can actually change and free ourselves from those which are negative. So, for example, many, if not all, people are actually suffering from anger, yeah, from frustration, and then coming from frustration, anger maybe, or from naturally disliking other people, certain characters, and so forth, and then acting out in the situation with anger. So whatever anger level we have in our life, the Buddha says this doesn't have to stay like that. The mind is such that it can change. It can be trained into a state of being free of anger by way of understanding how anger works, yeah? What the anger in our mind actually is, where it comes from, what it does to us, and how we can counteract it by way of using different methods to deal with difficult situations. So, in a nutshell, one of the things that the Buddha is describing is that getting angry in difficult situations, yeah, with difficult people, with irritating people, for example, or with maybe a workload that's too big for us, or frustrated with something and so forth, and then we get angry. So the Buddha is simply, for example, in this situation, suggesting that there's a different way to deal with difficult situations, and that way is to be patient. So patience is a state of mind where we are clear about this situation that I'm in right now, this person that I am together with now, is a difficult situation, and so I'm going to stay realistic. I'm not going to expect unrealistic things from this situation. I'm going to be clear about this is a difficult situation, and I decide not to put myself on fire by getting angry, but to stay calm and peaceful. And by staying calm and peaceful, I have access to all my intelligence, all my knowledge, all my love and compassion for the other person. While by getting angry, I'm in pain and I'm on fire. And I might think that this is helping me in dealing with the situation, but actually it's destroying the situation, it's destroying the relationship and so forth. So I'm taking this example because it is really widespread. Like most people have anger. I have anger. People that I know have anger. I virtually don't know a single person that doesn't have anger of our level. Let's not talk about the Dalai Lama or somebody like this, but of our normal person's level, everybody has this anger. So it's a very widespread phenomenon. And the thing is that nevertheless, we actually want to be happy and peaceful, and we don't want to experience suffering and pain. But we are choosing as a way to deal with a difficult situation, anger, which is painful. We don't want to experience pain, but we use anger, which is painful. There's something not right here in our daily life. So we're not talking about high spirituality like tantric realizations or inner energies or concentrations and clairvoyance and so forth, and Buddha's emanating bodies. We're not talking about this. We're talking about our daily life, right here, right now. Yeah, so the way how we use our mind is causing us problems. It's destroying our relationships. is setting us on fire and gives us pain. So the Buddha is saying this doesn't have to be like that. Yeah, so we have a certain kind of method in our mind that we are using, and this method is unsuccessful. We want to be happy, we want to experience peace and harmony with others. And we have here a method of anger which is completely not leading to peace or happiness or harmony with others, and so quite the opposite. We don't want to be in pain, we don't want to have destroyed relationships, but we're using anger, which is doing exactly that. It's putting us in pain, and it is straining the relationship. So the Buddha is saying that this doesn't have to be like this. Yeah, we are using these unsuccessful methods in our mind. We're using unsuccessful habits how to deal with different situations. And so the Buddha says we can simply use a different method. We can simply form a different habit. Meditation, the word for meditation in Tibetan is actually very much connected to the word for familiarization, getting familiar with something. In other words, to form a habit. Yeah, you meditate in order to get bit by bit better in a certain mental attitude. This is what you use the meditation for. You try to form a different habit. You try to walk down a different path in your life. And you do that. You want to walk this different path because it's going to improve your life. Yeah. It's going to be a more successful method for being happy and not experiencing suffering and pain on a daily basis. So I'm talking about this daily basis here because Buddhism is actually a religion or a system or a technique, or however you want to call Buddhism, that is going very, 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 very far. It is the Buddha is talking about potentials of the mind and therefore of our mind that are going very far. He's talking about liberation, where we got liberated out of samsara. He talks about enlightenment is possible for us, a complete state of conditionless love and compassion. He talks even about omniscience and so forth. So very, very advanced states that Buddhism is actually aiming for. But the question for us is, how do we break this down to our daily life? How can we apply this in our daily life, in our relationships, in our situation at work, and so forth, or even how we deal with ourselves? So we need to start somewhere. So we call this module here the essentials of Buddhism. So my main point here is today to talk about that Buddhism is all about mind. Buddhism is all about we know more about our mind, what's going on in our mind, and to understand, to get the courage to say to ourselves, well, not everything is well with my mind. Not everything is turning out well in my life. Things can be improved a lot. And then getting an inkling or an interest for how could I improve my life by improving my mind. So when I say improving my life by improving my mind, I want to come back to this example of anger. So as I said, one of the many methods that the Buddha is suggesting for dealing with anger is to stay deliberately calm, patient before the anger comes. So many people think that patience is something is when you are angry, that you are not expressing it, but you're suppressing it. This is not the case. Patience in the sense of Buddhism is that you don't even get angry. It is something before. It is not a suppressing factor. It is understanding the situation is difficult, maybe even knowing normally I deal with this situation by getting angry. I'm not going to do that because I know about the drawbacks, the negative outcomes that I get that I myself get and the people around get from me getting angry. And I decide from this understanding to stay calm, to put up, to forbear with a difficult situation. And so the Buddha there's this story where I think the Buddha himself is saying, or is it the Master Shantideva? But anyway, somewhere in our text it says the analogy is taken for anger and for patience, that you could imagine that you are on this planet, and this planet is full of thorns and sharp stones and sharp things like tins and stuff like this, and you try to walk barefoot. So you're having your foot is bare, it is unprotected, and it is constantly pierced by these thorns and by these stones and so forth. And so you try to do something against it. And so you could either take leather and cover the whole planet, all these thorns, all these stones with leather. And then there is not enough leather on this planet to do that. Or you can simply put leather shoes on your feet. And by doing that, the whole planet is covered. Yeah, so that's the thing, there is the whole planet, your whole life, the whole situation here in samsara is full of difficulties. It is full of thorns, full of unpleasant situations. So patience, if you develop in your mind a habit of patience, you really have a tool that comes down to that you have covered your feet with leather. You can go into any difficult situation by staying calm, by abstaining from anger, knowing the drawbacks of anger, knowing the benefits of patience, and taking this actively on as my new method. And so this kind of method, for example, you can strengthen, you can cultivate in meditation. You can, first of all, come to know more about the method, more about anger, first of all, then know more about what patience really is about. Yeah, there's whole chapters of ancient Indian scripture dedicated to anger and patience. And there's a lot to be known about that. It's a topic. Again, this doesn't maybe appear to us like this. It seems like, oh, anger, well, we know what anger is. Anger is when you kind of flare up and you're enraged with a difficult situation. And we also know what patience is, you stay calm and so on. Actually, it's a huge topic. There's a lot to be known, a lot to be explored there, a lot to be discussed, for example, with others. And on that basis, then you can, first of all, come to know about all these different aspects of anger and of patience and so forth. And then you can reflect on this by yourself. For example, actually, there is a certain voice inside of us that says that anger is good. And you will find that there's this conviction in us, actually, that we are losing anger because we think it is good. So there's really an inner voice to be debated, to be discussed with. We need to convince this or make clear to this voice that it is wrong. There's nothing good about anger. And it's all good about patience. So this is a real practice. Yeah. We go so far that high practitioners might actually look out for difficult situations in order to improve their patience. They actually go to the problem. They want people. I'm not saying they want people to be nasty to them, but they don't do what we are doing. We are normally avoiding people that are difficult. Yeah? If you can avoid them, we just walk away from them. So advanced practitioners would actually have no problem with difficult people around. There's even stories about some advanced practitioners who invited them to stay with them, yeah? To really have them around. So you can go so far. Yeah, you can actually. So just this little thing that I just said. We are encountering a difficult person. Yeah, we know this person already, and we go into the room and say, "Oh, now here is that person," and we just want to go out of the room. So we are completely conditioned by meeting this person. We're completely unfree. We're getting unhappy to see this person. We try to avoid this room, but obviously we wanted to go into this room, otherwise we wouldn't be there. But now we want to get out of this room. With patience, you're completely liberated. You have no problem to go into this room, stay in this room, do what you want to do. You have no problem to be with whoever you're with. It's a liberating experience. It's really, really improving our life. A big change. So I'm taking this example, which is a rather coarse example, and then this is an example that I hope we can all relate, because, as I said, we all have experiences in this direction. Just to point out how crucial the mind and how we are using the mind right now is in how our lives are unfolding. it is really a core topic. Yeah? What is our mind? What are our emotions? What are we doing with our mind? How we are using our mind? What kind of experience are we having? What kind of relations are we having? And so forth. Yeah, so all of this is something to be more aware about in our daily life. How do we deal with our family members? Again, in workspace, how do we deal with the people in the subway or in the bus or something like that? And so forth. And how do we react in our mind? What kind of emotions do we have? Yeah, become knowledgeable, become aware of our emotions. Yeah, but there might be many people who are rather into kind of suppressing their emotions or kind of acting cool or something, not admitting their emotions. But we need to find all this stuff. We need to be aware who we are in this very moment. What kind of emotions are there? What kind of habits? What kind of techniques we are using? So Buddhism is all about that. Buddha is clear about this crucial factor of the mind in our life. And he is also clear, more than we are right now, that we really can improve the situation here. We can improve our life by improving our mind. For this, we need to know more. So the Buddha is teaching a lot about how the present state is, which we normally call samsara. And he is also then, once we have understood our present state and the potential that we have for living a more full life or a more peaceful life, also a more loving life, a more compassionate life. Yeah? Not being afraid of other people's suffering, but actually being having not closing down when we see other people suffering, but being able to live a life of compassion, to stay open to the suffering of others, not having to run away from it, avoid the suffering of others, but be able to be with that, and if we can help somehow, we can help. So to bring all these kind of factors into our life, the Buddha is then teaching different techniques how to do that, how to generate this compassion. For example, this compassion. At the same time, the Buddha is talking out of a complete view of the world and of the mind in the world and of the beings in the world. So he is not just describing our daily life, but he goes, when he, for example, talks about how we experience problems in our life, where we have certain blockages or hindrances in our life, where we experience things that we don't want to experience. Sometimes this is called suffering. Yeah? When he talks about our suffering, and he goes very far. He goes so far that he talks about we all want to experience death. None of us wants death, but we all want to experience that. Might be a violent death. Might be driven over by a car. You might fall over from a building or from, I don't know, you'll die in all kinds of amazing ways. But even if that is not happening, we're all going to die in the end. Yeah, so this is also something the Buddha is inviting us. Invite this fact about your life into your life. Do not block death away and not talk about it, but have the courage to talk to yourself, to be aware of the fact that you're going to die. This will have a major influence on how you live life. So sometimes I'm saying that to reflect on death is actually enriching life. To reflect on death is something that is giving you a completely different perspective on what's worthwhile doing and what's not worthwhile doing. So that's nothing specific Buddhist. Also in other religions, they would about that we should be courageous enough to think about death and what this means about our life. But then, of course, the next question is, what does death actually mean? Does our experience, our life, our feelings, do they just stop at the time of death, or what are these feelings? What is the mind actually? What kind of phenomenon is it? Is it maybe continuing after death? Did it maybe come from somewhere before we were born? So all these kind of topics are also at the heart of the Buddha. Yeah? So when we say that in Buddhism, mind is crucial, it's the central phenomenon that all the practice is about, and where all the interest and all the exploration, all the studies is about the mind. all the meditations and so forth, then it goes so far to actually also explore what kind of phenomenon is the mind actually. And one of the crucial questions will be, is the mind something physical? Or is it something completely different? If the mind is something physical, then it's very clear that it's going to die together with all the other physical things. When the body, if the mind is the body or a part of the body, let's say the brain, then in the moment we die, when the brain dies, then the mind dies, and that's it. Then death means complete extinction. If the mind is not material, is something very different, then it would not share completely the development of the body. So that means when the body dies or when the body rots or when the body disintegrates, this does not have to mean that the mind also disintegrates. Yeah, so this is a crucial question when we talk about what is mind and how are we going to practice with the mind, or what kind of potential does the mind have. Yeah? We have to think about what kind of development is actually going on with the mind. And this depends very much on what kind of phenomenon the mind is and how it proceeds, what kind of process it's going through, especially at the time of death and so forth. So that's, of course, then also very, very essential for Buddhism. I think I'm not telling a secret when I say that Buddhism believes in reincarnation. So Buddhism is very much of the opinion that the mind is a very different phenomenon from matter. So in a nutshell, Buddhism is saying that mind, being non-material, having no color, no shape, no size, no smell, no touch, no temperature, and so forth. Yeah? Mind, which is defined as simply being clear and knowing, simply a form of awareness and so forth. This mind has connected to this body and is now connected with this body and his experiences like seeing and feeling and so forth. But will in the end disconnect from this body and go somewhere else, probably take another body. So that's a crucial point of view of Buddhism, because then this will have a great influence on what kind of practices we can do. Like the great lamas and so forth, they of course are doing practices which are not just restricted to this life. They practice meditation over many lives. And just today, again, I told you at the beginning, we have this Western Geshe Namdak here. He is many stories from the Indian monastery that he was in for 20 years. He was at Sarah J, and all the masters that he met there, and what kind of outstanding capacities they have, like for example in memorizing texts and so forth, or in meditation, or how many of them after the death were actually staying in meditation for many days and so forth. So all these examples, they had qualities that they did not achieve in this life. They were coming with certain what we call imprints from past lives. So I'm just saying I'm definitely not being able to completely explore this topic of reincarnation and of that dimension of the mind in our session today. But I'm just mentioning this, that this also is obviously an essential or a basic fact about or basic factor for all the Buddhist teaching and all the Buddhist meditation, therefore also. I mentioned in the beginning that Buddhism is actually aiming at very high results. We call nirvana, or liberation, or we call complete enlightenment, awakening, and so forth. So this is so high spiritual goals that you cannot start from ordinary life, full of distractions and maybe materialism and anger and jealousy and so forth, and achieve it in that very life. These are high spiritual goals that can be achieved only over practice over many lives. So in other words, we have here Buddhism a vision of what is achievable, that is necessarily including that we have the time for that. We have the time for that because we have time way beyond this life to practice. So Buddhism, like actually most Indian religions, has an incredible vast vision, incredible vast attitude towards time, for example. So I will definitely talk about this more in the next session. Was that in 2 weeks from now? How Buddhism would describe reincarnation and so forth. But anyway, right now, this mind that went through many kind of different lives, according to Buddhism, is now here in this life, and is in this life experiencing this ordinary or average experiences that we have every day, including things like jealousy or anger and so forth. So my experience is that in Buddhism, you always have to have some kind of balance between, on the one hand, knowing about the vast potential of the mind, with things like liberation and omniscience or Buddhahood, and on the other hand, what is to be done right here, right now, in our daily life. And so the path to liberation, the path to awakening, is actually done by one step at a time. So again, it comes back to what I said in the beginning. We need to generate an awareness about where we are right now. We need to know more about ourselves, understand more who we are, how we act, how we interact with others, and so forth. In order then to know what is the next step, what is the spiritual practice for us right here, right now. What is the next thing? And for example, patience could be such a starting point. Actually, patience and avoiding anger is in Buddhism a very, very crucial and a very basic training that you start almost immediately with. So it's very important to work with that. Yeah. I don't know if I should ask you for questions already. It is now 6:10. Or if I should go a little bit more with the reincarnation. I don't know. Do you have any questions about all of this? No, no questions. Everything clear. Amazing. So another thing that yeah, maybe I should first talk about reincarnation. So the mind in Buddhism is described as simply being clear and knowing. Yeah, it is simply experience. It is an experience of an object, or it can be a memory, or it can be thinking about the future and so forth. This experience comes always together with a feeling, with a sensation of pleasure or displeasure. It can also be a neutral feeling. So this kind of experience, yeah, what it is all about, is aware. This phenomenon of consciousness is something that is aware. Matter is actually not aware. So ourselves, we are just kind of some human being that is running around on this planet, and the planet is huge, and the oceans are huge, and the mountains are high, and we are kind of just this small being and so forth. And then we have the solar system, this huge sun, and the huge planets and so forth, and we're just something. But actually, we are possessing consciousness, and that's very, very special. We are possessing feelings. We are aware of the things that are around us. So the sun is mighty and big, but the sun doesn't know it is the sun. I know that it's the sun. The sun doesn't know that it is the sun because it doesn't have consciousness. It doesn't have awareness. The sun is burning all the time. It doesn't feel any pain. It has no feelings. It doesn't have consciousness. Jupiter is the biggest planet in our solar system. But Jupiter doesn't know that. Doesn't even know that it's a planet. Jupiter doesn't know anything. Jupiter doesn't have consciousness. I know that Jupiter is the biggest planet of the solar system. I know that there's a solar system and that Jupiter is a planet. This is because I have consciousness. And either I'm fascinated by Jupiter or not fascinated by Jupiter, but being fascinated or not being fascinated is mental, is a state of mind. Jupiter is not fascinated about anything, or the sun, or the solar system. The ocean doesn't know it's the ocean. The mountains don't know that there are mountains. We are living in a world that we are living in because we are aware. No matter is aware. And no matter can produce something of this type of phenomenon like consciousness. So that's an important thing to get familiar with, or to explore. For example, in this kind of meditation session that we did in the beginning. In this meditation that we did in the beginning, we were actually encountering our mind. We were trying to keep it on the breath, and it was wandering off. So this phenomenon there, yeah, so being aware of the breath, or being entangled in thoughts, or having thoughts even, is a phenomenon of consciousness. The sun is not aware of anything. It is not having thoughts. It's not entangled in anything and so forth. Yeah? It doesn't have any plans. Yeah? When we were distracted maybe into planning the future or thinking about the past and our memories and so forth instead of staying on the breath, the sun never thinks about the past because it cannot. It doesn't plan the future because it cannot. It cannot focus on anything or be aware of anything because it doesn't have consciousness. So matter is something very different from consciousness, or the other way around. Consciousness is something very different from matter. So this is difficult to understand because our consciousness, as it is very much entangled with matter. Yeah, we are embodied beings. Our mind is this, in a limited state called samsara, such that it can see through the eyes. If you destroy the eyes, the mind doesn't see anymore. It hears through the ears and so forth. If you damage the brain, certain functions will no longer be there. So this seems to indicate that actually the mind is the eyes, or is the ears, or is the brain. So according to Buddhism, this is not the case. The brain is not aware of anything. The brain doesn't have feelings. The whole body is not aware of anything. It doesn't have feelings. The hormones are not aware of anything, and they don't feel anything. The eyes don't see. No, that's quite a provocative statement, I guess. The eyes don't see. I repeat that. It's the consciousness, the eye consciousness, the consciousness that is connected with the eyes that sees. So this kind of phenomenon we are talking about. Yeah. So just today, actually, Geshe-Namdang was talking about these near-death experiences. I guess that's what you call it. So this is I'm talking about where people are in hospitals and are in an operation, and they are drugged, so they are in anesthesia, and then they're operated on. And during the operation, something goes wrong. So the machines on the patient are showing that the heart stops, the lung stops, the brain stops. And then after some minutes of trying to reanimate the person, all these functions come back and the person gets alive again. And the patient is telling the doctors what they were doing during that time. Yeah, so let's say the doctors were saying, "Oh, we need to listen this, or we're losing the person, or I think now he's dead," and so on. So the person can recap exactly what happened there. The person was actually in anesthesia, right? Was actually put to sleep, and actually was dead according to science, and comes back and tells the people in an out-of-body experience what happened. So it was clearly perceiving and validly perceiving, yes, such that it could be proven by the doctors being present that this actually happened. What the patient is recalling now, while the brain was dead, didn't get oxygen anymore because the lungs had stopped and the heart was no longer beating. Yeah. So what I'm saying here is the mind does not need the body in order to perceive. Our present state is such that it is entangled with the body. So it does see only by way of using the body. But it doesn't have to do that. Are people aware of this kind of phenomena, of this out-of-body experiences and this near-death experiences? Did you hear about that?
Not all of them, but most of them.
Yeah. What do you think about these?
There was a whole book written by Sogyal Rinpoche.
Oh, okay. Oh, really?
It's translated into Romanian.
All right. Did anybody read that? The time has come. No, of course, probably you're too busy to do this. But anyway, it's good to share this kind of information, especially if things are available in Romanian. So that if you find the time that you can read into that. Yeah, so this is these cases of where people have out of body experiences and then have experiences. In other words, they're aware of things, they hear things, they see things, and so forth. Actually, Geshe-Namdang was this was too much. Was recounting such a near-death experience or such an out-of-body experience of a woman that was born blind. So she has never seen anything in her life. Was born blind, and she went into an operation, and she had an out-of-body experience, and so of course she was in anesthesia, being brought to the operation. But then in the operation hall, she had this out-of-body experience, and the operating doctor, he made certain kind of movements before the operation. Just, I don't know, probably to get more flexible with the hands or something like this. Yeah, kind of some very strange, extraordinary exercise or something. So when this person came back from this out of body experience and was speaking again, she was asking the doctor, why did you make this kind of movements? Because she saw these movements. And the doctor said to her, wait a moment, you were born blind, right? You can't see movements. But that's exactly the movements that he did. So he himself could verify that what the person experienced was like that. So I'm giving you this kind of stories, which I hope they're not too much for everybody, but it's just because we heard this afternoon, so just pass it right on. So that's a little bit on the topic of that the mind and our feelings and our experience of happiness and of pain and so forth and of suffering, and also our experience of beautiful things like love and compassion. All of these are out of a realm that is not material. Yeah. It's simply mind, it's simply consciousness, it is what we call clear knowing, it is simply an experience. So this phenomenon here, Buddhism, is what Buddhism is interested in. And when we are saying that we want to be happy and we don't want to experience any kind of sufferings, then this is related to exactly this kind of experiences in that phenomenon. So I think it's safe to say that we don't have much experience with mind. Yeah, normally we are completely connected to the material world, to colors, to shapes, to sounds, to forms, so forth. Yeah, like gardens, flowers, rainbows, cars, food, smells, and so forth. We are not we're not dealing with many objects that don't have any material aspect. We simply don't know about them. Yeah, so this is something that we definitely need to explore further. Because it is the very place where our happiness and our suffering is happening. Yeah? So when we say problems, you might feel like the problems are somewhere outside. But actually problems are again an experience. So problems is something that is again very much connected to the mind. And how we experience a difficult situation, for example, that we experience it as a problem, is depending on how our mind deals with the situation. Or that we are enjoying a certain situation is also depending on the mind. So the point is simply that Buddha is strongly suggesting that we are developing a great interest in this phenomenon of mind and really explore what is its nature, what is its potential, how can we work with it, what is going on in the mind right now, and so forth. And we might feel like we know what mind is. We use this word or consciousness, awareness, and so forth, but actually we might be quite distant from it. It is the major part about ourselves. It's not the body our major part. We might be quite concerned with our body, but actually, as a matter of fact, it's not the major part about it. The major part about it is our mind, including our feelings. And right that, we don't know very much. So maybe that's enough for this session about the essential of Buddhism. One of the essential is like mind is the core phenomenon. It's the most important thing in our life. And it would be good if we would give it the attention that it deserves. In other words, trying to be more aware of it and trying to know more about it. All right? What was that?
I was asking if they have any questions.
Maybe they're shy. I don't know.
Anyway, we will have the discussion group next session, and maybe out of discussions there will come questions.
Yeah, cool. That's good.
Can you give us 2-3 discussion points for the next session?
Yeah, so yeah, there's many things you can discuss. Yeah, I mean, first you could try to work with this what we were discussing right now. Is mind material? Is mind the brain? Is mind the body or something? Or is mind something else? If it is something else, what is it? If it is not material. Yeah. So how is it that I can take some drugs and all of a sudden I'm completely high? I'm making all kind of funny experiences in my mind because I took a certain material substance. So how does this work? Yeah, doesn't that prove that the mind is actually material? So maybe this is something to discuss. Yeah, is it possible that mind is non-material? And does this make any sense that the sun doesn't know that it's the sun, and that the universe doesn't know it's the universe? Or you could ask yourself, if the sun doesn't know that it's the sun, why do I know that it's the sun? Why do you know that it's the sun? And
Yeah.
Yeah. You could also think about what color are your emotions, or what shape are your emotions? Was one of the questions that one of the great Tibetan yogis sent one of his students away to meditate in the cave. What color is your mind? Yeah?
Yeah.
Or in general, like that, do you think that mind is crucial in your life? Do you think that one should dedicate more time and space to exploring the mind? Is that important enough? Do we need to work with our mind, or is something already all right?
Yeah, great.
And so forth.
Also, meditation would be nice during the discussion group session. So we have many things to do on Tuesday.
Who's going to lead the discussion? Are you going to do one-on-one, or are you doing a group discussion?
I will lead the session. I will try to.
Is the lady still there?
No. She's
No?
not.
Okay. All right. So wonderful. Then have a nice session. Maybe we could have a dedication at the end. Yeah.
Yes, I have printed the dedications. I can give it to the people.
So I just want to say some words about what we're doing right now. So according to Buddhism, when you're doing positive actions, then this creates a certain positive energy, let's say, which is called karma or positive karma. And positive karma will only lead to happy results in the future. But there's many different happy results. Yeah. So we can dedicate the positive potential that we have accumulated this evening by dealing with different Buddhist topics. For all kind of positive things. We can dedicate it for other people. If we know people who are sick, for example, we can pray for them that by way of this positive potential, may they be healed, or may there be no war in the world, may there be no starvation in the world, and so forth. So the prayers that we're gonna do shortly, the three short prayers. The first one is something about that we are actually dedicating this merits that we have generated this evening to complete enlightenment, that we may generate the so-called bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment, and actually then attain enlightenment. And then we're going to do two prayers for the long life of His Holiness and of Lama Sopa Rinpoche, the Lama that is giving us the materials and the supervision with regard to discovering Buddhism and so forth. That's what we pray for their long life. So why do we pray for their long life? Because for many people, these lamas are greatly inspirational and a great help. So one of the positive things to wish for is that they stay long with us and may not die. Yeah? So you have it in English or you have it in Romanian?
English.
In English. So we just start with this one on bodhicitta. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. And then we do the long life prayer for His Holiness. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All power, Tharchin, basic, Tenzin, Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. And then the one for Lama Sopa Rinpoche. You who are called to do a small way, who serve as a bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers, honoring three jewels, savior of myself and others, your disciples, please live long. So thank you, everybody. And then hope to see you in 2 weeks.
In the end, the quality of the sound and the video was great. In the end, yes. The sound. We didn't do anything.
Okay, cool. Wonderful.
Okay.
Then take care, everybody, and see you in 2 weeks, hopefully.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye. Thank you.